Hey there, welcome to my channel. This is the second part in a three-part series around the Kloudnote S, which is a $300 10-inch e-ink note-taking device. This particular video is all about a visual tour, so it's not a review. This is where I go into quite a bit of detail in terms of what the device can do, and all the features the device has. So it's a way to really get to know the device. I have a lot of thoughts on this device that I'm gathering up, and I'll be talking about those in the final video, which is going to be the full review. But I'm holding that down for this video. This is just a demonstration of what this device is and what it's capable of. So having said all that, let's go ahead and jump on in and take a look at the Kloudnote S. Okay, so we're going to begin our tour just looking at the general system settings and gestures. We'll go ahead and come out of sleep mode. And we'll start off with gestures. Now gestures are, there's only a couple of them on the device, and they're not customizable at all. So they're just two static gestures that you can do. The first is by swiping from the bottom like this, you can go to the home screen. So if I go into a PDF, for example, and I want to go back to the home screen, I can swipe from the middle and that will take me there. The other gesture is a swipe down bar to reveal the system tray. Those are the only two gestures that are universal to the device. There are some gestures within the individual apps, but those are the broad gestures that are available. Since we're in the control center, let's go ahead and walk through this. It's pretty straightforward. You've got your Wi-Fi toggle as well as your Bluetooth toggle, and we'll do an example of what a Bluetooth keyboard looks like on this device, but that'll be later. You have the ability to do a screenshot. You can do screencasting, and this is using Miracast. So you do need something like a Chromecast or some sort of receiving device to get the signal. That's the type of screencasting here. Hibernation is just sleep mode. You can also achieve that by just tapping on the power button. You have the floating ball, which we'll get to in a second. You can do a screen refresh, like so. And then finally, you can go right into the settings, and we'll get to that in a second. If we click on the floating ball, you see this little guy over here, and if you click on that, then you have a number of options, and most of these mirror what we saw in the control panel. So you've got your home button there, you've got a back button, you've got a screenshot, your power button, and your refresh button. The ball can be moved around by holding onto it, and it will attach to the side, like so. So this is a nice shortcut instead of having to swipe down, but it does take up a little bit of the screen real estate. And let's go ahead and take that off. Okay, so just looking at the home screen, you do have a search bar here, which is actually pretty powerful. It will use character recognition, or OCR. So if I type a word in here and it finds it in a note, so for example, I have the word hello in a few of my notes, then those will be part of the search results, and you can see that there. And you can see that it'll look both in the note, it'll look in the reader, and other. In addition to that, below here you have kind of a nice little graphical image. This changes. It's not clear what causes this to change, but this does rotate to different images. You've got your date, and you've also got a quote that they have there. Your Notes app is here, and your Reader app is next to it. You can either click on these kind of widget icons to go directly into these documents, or you can go into the apps themselves by clicking on the top bar, and we'll do that later. Down below, finally, is you do have email, and it's a pretty basic standard email kind of application, and we'll look at that later as well. And you can see some emails that have been either sent or received here. And much like in the note in the reader, you can click on the top bar to go into your inbox. Over here on the side, you'll notice that there is a place that currently says says no logged in. But if you click on that, this is basically where you can log into your Kloudnote account. Now, there's two reasons why you would want to do that, and it is a free account. The first reason is that you're able to back up your notes, and I believe your documents as well, using the Kloudnote account. However, you also may, and perhaps more importantly, it unlocks the ability to do OCR character recognition. The reason why a little bit earlier I was able to search on my notes was because I had logged in and had OCR run previously, so that's what enabled that to happen. So you do need the Kloudnote account not only for the notes backup, but also for the OCR. And then here on the side, you've got more shortcuts to go into the Notes app, into the Reader app, and then you have a general button to go into your applications, and we'll take a deep look at those a little bit. Let's go ahead and go into Settings. Settings are pretty straightforward. We'll start from the top. The network is simply your Wi-Fi settings, and we can see I'm logged into my network here, and plus all the local networks. Bluetooth, we can toggle that on, like so. And we'll look at the performance of the Bluetooth keyboard later. You can see I've already paired it there. If we go into general settings, it's where you can do the system language. Here are your options. It's listed there. And then you can set your date and time. You do have two input methods. You can either go by theirs in terms of the keyboard, or you can go by the Google board as indicated there. You've got your sound toggle. You can increase the contrast. And that's the float ball button, which we saw earlier. So it's the same thing as the floating ball there. And then you can have a screensaver clock, which would show up when you're in this mode. Next is the account. And this is again where you'd log into your Kloudnote account. You can also connect to either a OneDrive, Dropbox, or Baidu network accounts. These, we'll show those in the notes section, but these are where you can manually save your documents onto these services. We can go into the battery mode here, and there's a couple pretty standard options here. Sleep mode is basically when you're in a state of readiness. So if I press on the power button, this is sleep mode. So by clicking, this will save battery drained versus having it on, and you can go right back into the device with maybe, 1 or 2 seconds. Then you have auto power off, which shuts down the device such that you have to boot it up to open it when it's done. This, of course, saves a lot more battery, but it does take longer to boot up. And I haven't timed this, but usually that's like 20 to 40 seconds, depending on the device. So it's not as convenient as auto sleep, but you do pretty much perfectly save the battery when you're in this mode. And then you can see your battery status there. If we keep going, you can check for system updates. I should be up to date. You'll notice that the last update was released on April 11th of 2025, and that's relatively recent. I'm shooting here in the beginning of May, so just less than a month ago they updated the device. So there's definitely still making updates to this device, and you can turn on or off automatic downloads. There is the ability to put a screen lock or a password onto the device. You can do feedback here. This is one of those areas where it's helpful to have a Bluetooth keyboard connected, because you can then type your information in and then send it. You can certainly use an on-screen keyboard to do that, as we can see here, but it's a little bit easier with Bluetooth. And then finally, there is the About screen, which is information about the device, including the user manual and other legalese. You'll notice that the Android system is 8.1. Okay, so now we're going to take a deeper look into the note-taking aspect of this device. And you'll note I went ahead and logged into my Kloudnote account. That'll allow me to use character recognition. I can either click on this button, or I can click on this widget to get into notes. We'll go ahead and click on this button. And what you have is a list of your files and folders. And so there's an example of a folder, and all these others are examples of notes, and here's where you can start a new note. We'll do that in a second, but you do have a search functionality here, and that allows you to search within the notes, and that includes handwriting recognition. You can add a folder by clicking on that button there. You can change the view, so you can turn this into a list view, or you can turn this into a thumbnail view. This changes the sorting order of the notes. This is your syncing. So if I click on this, this is syncing notes onto the Kloudnote account. So even if you connect to a Dropbox or a OneDrive account, that icon will not back up to those accounts. This only works for the Kloudnote service. If I click on the settings icon, there's just a few settings that are available there. Okay. And if you had multiple pages, then you could advance the pages there. Now, if we go ahead and click on the ellipses under a notebook, then we have a number of options here. We can rename that notebook. We can pin it. So here's an example right there of one that's pinned. So the pinned ones always end up on top of the list. So for example, if I go back and notice when I resort, see the pinned one stays there, but the other files resort. Like so. Okay. You also have the ability to put it into a collection, which really means a favorite. And we see an example of that there. You can lock the file. You can create your own categories. So if I click on the category, you can see I can either type in a new category or I can select a previous category. And then you can either export or delete. Export is where you can start to get into some of those other outside services where you can save your files. If I export from here, then what's going to happen is it's going to automatically do the export. Well, normally it would. I'm not sure why it's failing. We are on Wi-Fi, right? Yep. However, it's going to export them as PNG files. So this is you can see there, it's a 2-page document. This would then export as in 2 pages. If I go into the note, I have the option to export here as well, and I have more say in how that exports. So now if I click on export, I can now either do it as PNG files, or I can do it as a PDF file. So the only way to export in a PDF file is to go into the note itself. Now, before we get out of this page, you can also long press on a note, and that gives you some additional options. There you can see you can rename the file. You can also export from here. This button with the 3 people allows you to share either via email or by Bluetooth. You can lock the file. You can move it to a folder. So you can see I have the ability here to move it into the folder, fun folder. And finally, you can delete, and you can do these in mass. I can click on multiple documents and then perform that action, although you'll notice that the first 3 options goes away when you select more than one document. And you can deselect like so. Okay, let's go ahead and start a note and see what that process looks like. So this is the screen where you start. You've got the ability to name it, and you can either take the default name or you can X that out and then go ahead and talk about, just type in your own title. You have the ability to put it in a category. It's not required. If you click on that, you can see what we saw earlier where you can pick an existing category or create a new one. And then you can select your template, and there you have categories of templates, or you can just look at all of them, and there's 39 in total that fit onto 4 pages. And I'll just quickly walk through these to show off the selection of templates that are available. And let's go ahead and create this note. Okay, here we are. You'll notice there's a page number down here, which is going to disappear shortly. There you go. That number will show up again if we add an additional page. That is done by a swipe gesture inside the notebook. So I'm going to go ahead and swipe like this and click on this button. And now we're on page 2 of 2. Now that we have 2 pages, I can swipe between the pages. So if I swipe back like so, now I'm on 1 of 2. You'll notice that the name of the notebook is up here. I can use this arrow here to get out of the notebook. I can also click on this name, and I can actually move between notebooks or folders here. Then you have the listing of pen styles. If you click on that, there are 5 styles in total, and they have different levels of thickness. So this slider, it changes that number there, like so. If I wanted to, I can make sure that this pen drawer stays on the screen as I'm writing by clicking on the pen icon. So now if I write there, you can see that tray still stays there. If I get rid of the pen and I start writing, see it goes away, and that's what it would normally look like. Our eraser options are next. So if we double click on that, you can see the different type of eraser options that are available. You could also pin that as well. Here you have lines next to that. So if I click on that twice, those are the different types of shapes that are available, and then you can either go to these default thickness settings, or you can manually change the setting. This is where AI is basically just converting any type of writing into text. So let's actually go ahead and write a few words here. Okay, so here I have hi there in print, and in script I've got yo there. If I click on the AI button, it'll now, and again, I have to be on the Kloudnote account for this to work at all. And let's try that again. There we go. And you can see that it was able to interpret both the print as well as the cursive. And then in this window, you can also save it, copy it, export it, and so on. You'll notice that there's a little icon here, which is grayed out, and that is for voice messages. So we'll get to that in a second. Let's go ahead and get out. And actually, here we are. So if I click on this, give it a second. Okay. So now it's recording, and we're going to go ahead and see what the speakers sound like. And here we go. I'm going to press stop, and now there's this voice recording. So in order to see that recording, I'm going to click this down arrow, and here it is. Let's go ahead and play that. So now it's recording, and we're going to go ahead and see what the speakers sound like. Here we go. Okay, it's decent. It's what you would expect for speakers on a device like this. Nothing to write home about. I could have turned the volume up. I know that was a little quiet. But it's serviceable. If I click on this icon here, you can see any recordings that have been made will be listed here. And if I want to go ahead and go into AI now, you'll notice that the ASR is now available. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go ahead and have it transcribe. So let's go ahead and see how well it does there. And it's fairly decent. It's not perfect, but it's not too bad. Okay, if we get out of that, if we click on this plus, then we'll see the ability to insert either an image or a text box. And you can have multiple text boxes on a page. There's your undo redo. You have your search functionality. So let's go ahead and search. Okay, so we searched for the yo, and then you can see that it picked it up in this note. You can see the text there. Again, that functionality is available by using OCR, which requires a Kloudnote account. You have the ability, it does have palm rejection, so I can put my palm here and write. But there are times when you might accidentally flip a page, and if you want to eliminate that possibility, then you click on this, and now with this on, it won't move pages. So now I'll have to take that off, and now I can move forward accordingly. If we click on this little ellipsis, we can change the template for that existing page. We can do the miracast here. We can share, we can QR code share, we can export, and this is merely selecting the language in which the OCR will operate on. Finally, we have this icon here, and if we click on this icon, then it eliminates any of the menu except for that icon, and it gives you more of a clean canvas to work on. And that's all the functionality in the note-taking app. You will note that there is no lasso function on this device. Now, lastly, before we finish with notes, I do want to show examples of the pen styles. So we'll go ahead and get into that. And so here's what the ballpoint pen looks like, and you can see it at the different thickness levels. It does have pressure sensitivity, which is unusual. Most devices with a ballpoint pen does not have pressure sensitivity. This one does. So you can see, we'll go ahead and pick the ballpoint, and we're at 9 point. So I can draw, and I can change the thickness. So you can see the difference between thickness from here to here, and that's based on pressure. We go to the next page. This is the pen style, which is this guy right there. And we're going to actually just go to each one accordingly. And then you can see it's what the style looks like and different thicknesses. It is pressure sensitive as well. If we go into the brush style, same situation. Yes, pressure sensitive. Here we go into the pencil. You can see all that. Again, pressure sensitive. And finally, we go to the highlighter, the only marker, which is not pressure sensitive. And that is as thick as the highlighter gets. And there is no color choice for any of these. They just default to what I just showed. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn our attention then to the Reader app. I'm going to go ahead and click on this icon. And here we are in the home page. There's a search bar, and you can look at the titles of books. We'll go ahead and go to e-ink. And so there it is. In addition to that, you can add what a folder, or they call that libraries. Here's an example of what a library looks like. You can change from these icons to a list by clicking on this button. So it looks like that. This is just scanning. If you click on this icon, it's just scanning the device for documents. So if you had imported a document and you didn't see it here, you could click on that button to get it into your library. If you click on this icon, this is how you can move files on and off the device. So what you do essentially is you can put this into your the URL of your browser, and it never changes, so you can bookmark it. And then this allows you to import as well as to export documents. So it's a pretty easy way using a web browser to move documents on and off this device. Then you have the ability to sync, and again, this icon only syncs to the Kloudnote servers. It doesn't sync to any other services that you're connected to. And if we go into the settings, those are some pretty straightforward settings for the device, and this is just a shortcut into the settings where you can bind your accounts like OneNote or Dropbox or Baidu. And if you had multiple pages of documents, then you could advance this way. You'll notice that I have 3 different document types that this device can read. You've got the PDF, you've got an EPUB, and you have a Word doc. So those are all available. You'll also notice that there's these little icons on the bottom of this document. This indicates that there is some written annotations in that document. Let's go ahead and go on in and take a look at that. So here we are inside the document. I'm going to go ahead and go to the first page. Actually, let me click on that icon. There we go. And here you can see an example of some of my writing. We'll go right back in here, but let's just take a quick look. If I long press on the document, I do have some additional features. I can select multiple documents, like so. I have the ability to lock or rename them, although that will only work if I have one item selected. So if I unclick on this, you can see that's available. I can move into a library. So if I click on that, you can see I can move it to the Moss Books library. I can delete, or I can export these documents into whatever I have logged into. All right, let's go ahead and go back into this PDF file. Oops, let's get out of this. There we go. And we go into the PDF file. There's a menu on top and on bottom. Let's start with the bottom. We already looked at schedule, which is really where you are in the document. So if I click on this, it'll take me to that point into the document. And then these icons move between chapters. If I click on the display, I have a number of options. I can zoom in and I can increase the contrast. I can also change the zoom and I can reset that to 100. There is the ability to auto scroll, and this basically will flip pages on a cadence, and the cadence is set there. Now, if we look at the top, if there's anything in the table of contents, you'll find it here, and that would include any type of bookmarks that you set. This document doesn't have a table of contents, so it's empty, and I haven't bookmarked anything. But if I did bookmark it, let's go ahead and select a bookmark there. Then if we went here, we would see that bookmark like so. If I click on this icon, this is looking for all of the annotations that I've made in the document. So you can see each page has some sort of annotation, and I have 2 pages of annotations. I can either click on this button to move to the next page, or I can swipe over, and then you can see those there. And you can note that I can select multiple pages, and then I can either share those, export, or delete those annotations. The pages themselves will remain, only the annotations will go away. You have the ability to do some writing on the device, and you'll notice you have 2 pen types, a standard pencil actually, and then you've got a brush, you have different thicknesses, and so on. Here you can just refresh the page. The next icon is the Miracast. So if you have that ability, you can share what you're showing on here onto a screen. This is for touch input. So instead of being able to use touch, you now have these navigation buttons that you would use as opposed to swiping. And then finally, you have some settings that you can apply to the document. Now, real briefly, annotating is fairly straightforward. And here you can see I can toggle on and off whether I use the stylus to navigate or annotate. Right now we're on annotation. Let's go to the pen style, make it kind of thick. And there's just a quick example of how I can annotate onto the device. If I export the file, I can export just the annotations so that only the pages where I've written will export. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back. Let's look at an EPUB. So here we are. You can see that the settings have changed slightly. So now we have a schedule screen still. That's about the same. But now we have a different formatting screen. And you can change different elements of the margins, the spacing, and the font. It does have audio playback. So not great. If we go ahead and pick on the settings, you can change some of that, hopefully to make it a little bit easier to discern, but definitely a heavy accent in that device. And of course you have auto scroll here as well. If there is a table of contents, and this one does have a table of contents, then you can see it over there, as well as your bookmarks. Here you can search for any of your annotations, which I don't have here. Pen styles are the same as before. You have the ability to bookmark, to search, to refresh, and so on. So mostly the same, just a few changes. And this is pretty much the same. Okay, and then let's go ahead and get out of this document. And finally, let's go ahead and go into a doc file. And this is not a very good file, but I'm just using this to show off the functionality, which is pretty much the same as it was with the EPUB file. So that pretty much, in a nutshell, is the Reader app. Okay, so the last thing in terms of the on-screen apps is the email. And we'll go ahead and click on this to go into the application. And it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot going on here. We click on this. You can see that's my email address for this particular email account. And it has your standard inbox options. So there's not a lot here. It's a pretty basic email application. I am going to go ahead, though, and start a new email. And the reason why I'm going to do this is a good opportunity to kind of show off the Bluetooth keyboard. So I have this guy all set up and it's connected to the device. So let's go ahead. I'm going to read out the words as I type them, and then you can see how they type across the screen. Hello there. This is me typing on the Bluetooth keyboard. Please excuse my terrible typing as I am typing on my lap and it is not very stable. Okay, so one of the things that you might notice is that there is a bit of a lag between me doing the actual typing and the words printing across the screen. But it is accurate. I mean, it's definitely capturing my strokes, both good and bad. It's probably best for those people that like to type but not necessarily look at the screen. But it definitely works. There's no question about that. And this is what that looks like. So I'm just going to take a quick look at the applications. We'll go ahead and click on that. And these are all the installed applications. You can see I've downloaded Kindle. The App Store is here. We'll go in that in a second. It has a pretty standard web browser, a calculator, a calendar. Not a lot of depth to the calendar. We'll go ahead and click on that just to show you. You can create events. So if I click on, you can set the date there. But if I click on this plus item here, I can now create a task or an event, and that's pretty much what the calendar is good for. It has a file manager, and this is where you would see the actual file structure on the device. So all the folders and files are located here using this app. You have an ability to go into all your images, your email, your settings, your sound recorder, and they do have WPS Office as well. If I click on the App Store, you can see the selection of apps that are available. And currently under the settings, we have this for English apps. If we go to Chinese, there's a much smaller list of apps that are available. But if we go back to English, then you can see that's the first page of applications. That's the second page. And this rounds us out. Now you do have the ability to sideload applications. That's talked about in the manual. So you can put APKs on this device and then have them work. But keep in mind that this is running Android 8.1. So your application must be configured for Android 8.1 in order for it to work on this device. Real quickly, we'll just go into Kindle. And here we are. So here we're inside a book, and I can just advance pages like so. So it's fairly snappy. Takes about a second for the page to change, which is definitely acceptable. If we go ahead and get out, there you can see the list of covers, and they're a little bit on the darker side, like so. And I won't go through the rest of it. It's a pretty standard Amazon app, but it works fairly well on this device. So there is a film on this device. You can just barely tell by looking at the very edge. And I don't know if this is being picked up on the camera, but you can see kind of a glossy screen where the edge of the film doesn't quite go all the way to the end of the device. It's not obvious. The film is definitely well applied. I want to highlight this just because it does make a little bit of a sound as you write. It's not a overt sound like, say, a Remarkable or the Note Air 4C by Books, but it is there. And it does depend on what type of stylus pen that you're using. So I'm going to start off by using the one that they have given with the device. And then I'll use this this stylus, which comes with the Books Go 10.3, and you can hopefully hear the difference. So let's go ahead and do a quick demo of that. Okay, and then let's do this again, now using this Books tip. So those are the differences. It is subtle, but there is a little bit of a nice scratchy sound to it. I put more pressure as I wrote with this stylus for some reason, and that's why the lines look a little different. It's not the styluses themselves, it's how I wrote with them. So that's actually the differences between me, not the styluses. But you could definitely hear a different sound. In fact, let's go ahead and do that again. I'm going to just do a scribble with this stylus. Okay, and then let's do it again with this stylus. All right, definitely a difference, so that the type of tip that you use will change the sound slightly, but you do get a nice little auditory feedback regardless. Now, the device itself does not come with any type of cover or carrying case, so you have to buy that separately. And they do create a case that you can buy specifically for this device, and this is it right here. It's kind of got a nice feel to it, although I do feel like it's going to collect dust fairly easily. You can see it's got the word Geniatech there on the side. There's a loop to put your stylus, so you can kind of shove it in like so. It's a little tight, but will probably loosen up over time. It's not magnetic. So if I go ahead and open it up, you can see there is the strip in the middle. And essentially what it is kind of a sticky adhesive that hopefully won't leave any type of residue on the device, and you can remove it. It says up to 500 times you can take it in and out, which is a lot. So this is basically their answer to a case. It's about $30 for it, and it feels okay. It's fine as far as I can tell. And if we go ahead and put that in there, like so, has a nice fit. So it is kind of a nice little case. Nothing special, but certainly appropriate for its price point. Okay, so there you have it. That's all the features of the Kloudnote S, or at least a vast majority of them. I hope you found that informative. If you have any questions about anything in the video that maybe wasn't covered, just let me know and I'll answer those. But in the meantime, I'm going to work on that final video in the series, which is the full review, where I give you my thoughts on this device. Do I recommend it or not? And if I do, to whom? All that is in the next video, including other things like battery results and what have you. So I'm going to do a pretty comprehensive review, as I normally do, and you'll know a lot about whether this device might be the right device for you based on that video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and until then, I will see you next time.